Hey guys, how's it going? It's Joe Raiti from Raiti's Rides, and I've been getting a lot of comments and questions and emails about people wanting to know more about my racing career. If you watch some of my videos here and there, I have said a few things that, I used to race cars professionally. And what's blown my mind is people actually want to know more about that. So I put this little vlog together to specifically focus on something near and dear to my heart, my car racing past. While this video is going on, I have taken actual photos and I've embedded them in the video. So if you are just listening, you might want to look at the screen every now and then because some of these things that I'm talking about, you'll actually be able to see pictures of me during this time period. Let me just give you a little bit of background history on me. So I'm the oldest of six kids. Um, my father owned a mechanic shop for over 30 years. So as soon as I came out of the womb, I was around cars. I remember going to my first drag race when I was 5 years old, crying my eyes out because the engines were so loud. I remember when this propel car pulled up to the line and the turbine engine was making so much noise and the flames, it really freaked me out. Obviously, I very quickly got over that. In 1983, when I was 7 years old, we moved to Florida. That was a very, very important move, more important than what I ever could imagine. The reason why is when we moved down to Florida, my father took me to the 1983 12 Hours of Sebring. That was my first time ever witnessing not only sports car racing, but also endurance racing. And from 83 on, we always went every year to the 24 Hours Daytona and the 12 Hours of Sebring. So I consider myself very lucky to have lived in Florida and have two of the biggest endurance races in the world right here. Obviously, the only bigger one is the 24 Hours of Le Mans, which hopefully, if all goes well, I should be going to that race in the next couple of years with my wife. So, anyways, went to the races. One thing I can remember is that young boy standing up against the fence, closing his eyes, and telling his father, what car was it that was going by. That's something that drew me to the racing like a moth to a flame. I love the variety of cars. I love the different sounds they made. A flat six from a Porsche 911, a V8 from a Corvette, a screaming V12 from a Ferrari. There were so many great sounds, and it was just a wonderful time and really made an impact on me. And I, from that moment on, watched racing religiously with my father every Sunday. It wasn't football, it wasn't basketball, it wasn't baseball, it was racing. So from seven to the college years, was a fan, never an actual participant. Now, I remember my first time getting behind the wheel of something gas powered with a steering wheel. My parents took me to Walt Disney World, and we went over to the Disneyland Speedway, and I got behind one of the wheels of the cars there, where they have the track, and you have to, it keeps you on the track so that you don't crash into other cars. That really was my first taste of being behind the wheel of something that was gas powered. A little bit later, went to a place called Malibu Grand Prix. Malibu Grand Prix was something locally where they had a track and you paid per lap and you try to break the time limit. And what's cool is that if you lost control of the car, the people were watching, they actually could apply the brakes to keep you out of trouble. But that was another time when during those younger years, that I was behind the wheel of something that was internal combustion engine, and I had a steering wheel. Fast forward to my freshman year of college, I met this guy, and he happened to race shifter carts. There's a racetrack out in Orlando, a drag strip, and a small oval called Speed World. He used to race shifter carts out there. I started talking with him. We became really good friends. What was awesome was he hooked me up with a hand-me-down cart that he wasn't using anymore. And I first got my taste of actual shifter kart racing while I was in college at the University of Central Florida. Now, during the summer, I would come home, and thankfully, we had a place in St. Petersburg called Mo-Kart. Now, if you're wondering, Mo-Kart, does that have anything to do with Momo? You're 100% correct. Mr. Moriarty, the guy who started Momo, had some dabblings in this indoor karting thing. And this place was totally indoors, gas powered karts. It was amazing because during the summertime when it's raining all the time, you can still go down there and run your laps. And they would have all sorts of races, sprint races, endurance races that were extra on the weekends and stuff. And it was a lot of fun. Well, I started getting really good, and people were telling me that I was getting good and that I should try racing cars. The problem is, of course, is I didn't have a lot of money and I didn't have a famous last name. So I thought that was mission impossible. I thought that was just a pipe dream, as my dad would call it. What eventually happened was, I remember in 1997, the FIA GT series, for the first time ever, came to the United States. They actually raced at Sebring that year. Not during the 12-hour race, but in October they had a separate race. Being close to cars that I saw in Speed Vision, the Ferrari F40, the McLaren F1 GTRs, the Porsche 911 GT1, the Panoses and the Marcos and the Dodge Vipers, it did something to me. It made me change my course. It was my last semester of college. I knew I was going to finish and get my degree. That was a must. But I said, you know what? What the hell? Let me give this race car driving thing a shot. Because I knew I didn't want to wake up 50 years old one day and say, hey, I should have done that or I should have tried it. So I said, I'm going to go for it. So what I did was I sold everything I owned. I'm literally talking about everything except for my clothes. One of my most prized possessions, my 1985 Corvette, a car that I actually bought myself when I was 17 years old, loved that car. I wound up selling it to go after this. I knew that I needed to get a racing license. I didn't have the ability to get a car to go to the racing schools that they have to acquire your license. So I looked for an actual racing school. Now, there's lots of choices. Bob Bondurant had a school. Skip Barber, when they were still in business, had a school. I decided to go with a name called Derek Daly. Now, Derek Daly was huge in endurance sports car racing. I actually met the guy when I was younger. His son today races, Connor Daly. I decided to choose that school all the way out in Las Vegas over the other schools because at the time in 1998, when I graduated from college, nobody had cars that had computer telemetry on them except for the Derek Daly Racing Academy. And I knew that that would be crucial in learning the craft of race car driving. And I was proven right. I mean, the second day I was there. So I went to the Racing Academy out there for the whole week. It was amazing. It was my first time behind a single seat open wheel car. I knew that NASCAR was not going to be the road for me. My dad never really watched it, maybe Daytona 500 or whatnot, but it just doesn't do it for me, especially the newer style NASCAR because all the cars look the same. You know, there's only two road courses the whole year. That just wasn't for me. So I knew that I needed to get in an open wheel car, and whether I went all the way to Indy, which was one goal, or get into sports car racing, I knew that the open wheel car would be the best because when you're learning the craft, being able to come up with adjustments, know what the car is doing, you're going to learn it best in those open wheel cars. So I was proven totally right. Every time you came in, the instructor with the telemetry, they knew where you were lifting. They knew when you were hitting the brakes. You couldn't lie. And I remember probably the hardest thing for me to learn in racing school, it's the total flip-flop of when you're driving on the street and you're coming to a stop. On the street, you're coming up to a stoplight, you lightly press on the brake pedal, and then you apply more pressure. It's the total flip flop on the racetrack. You actually want to apply the most pressure you can, and then trail brake off. That took some reconditioning that I had to rewire my brain to work that way. And I remember once my instructor literally took uh, the heel of his foot because he was getting frustrated. He's like, "You could get harder on the brakes here," and I'm like, "I am." And he's like, "No, you see that dip? You're not." And that's when he took his heel and slammed it into the top of my foot, and that actually worked. I was glad that he did it after the fact. When my foot was throbbing, it didn't make sense, but once I got back in the car, it made 100% sense to me. So, anyways, after racing school, now I was ready for the next step. I needed to get a car. And I had to figure out where was I going to race, what series was I going to race in. So I got into the SCCA racing Formula V. Now, if you don't know what that is, it's basically a formula car. So it's open wheel car, single seat. What's powering it is an old air-cooled Volkswagen engine from a Volkswagen Bug. Not a lot of horsepower. The cars are super light. And I'm telling you, out of most of the cars that I've raced, had the most fun and some of the best races ever in that car. And I will do some other vlogs to focus on some of my races that were very special, like my first time to Daytona, my first time getting on the podium, my first time winning a race. I'll touch on those. I don't want to make this video 2 hours long. This isn't the after school special. I will break that down so that it's in smaller chunks for all of you. But Formula V is where I started. Once I started doing well in Formula V, then I stepped up to Formula Ford. Formula Ford, back then it used a 2-liter Pinto engine, carbureted engine out of a Ford Pinto. More adjustability in the car. With the Formula V, you don't have really big wings or anything like that. Formula Ford, the first few years, didn't have big wings either, but there's way more adjustability in the car, way more adjustability. Transmission, the gearbox is better. Everything is, it's a quicker car. Things are happening faster. So I stepped up to that level. Won a bunch of races, was doing well. At this time, I'm going out and finding my own sponsorship. And that's probably the thing that most people don't understand is 90% of your time is looking for the sponsorship or looking for the money. 10% of the time is the actual racing. It's extremely difficult. If you think that, oh, you just call up Budweiser and you say, hey, I'm racing cars and I'll put your name on the car. Can I have some money, please? If you think it's that easy, you're wrong. I mean, there's an old saying in racing. If you want to make $1 million in racing, spend two. It really is, out of all the sports, obviously the most money intensive. Set of tires, I remember in Formula V, was $1,200, and those are just little tiny skinny slicks. But anyway, so I did Formula Ford for a while. I actually lived up in Canada. I moved to Canada for a little while and raced in the Canadian Formula Ford Championship. One of the reasons why is I wanted some tough competition. Up there, road racing is more of an important racing series compared to NASCAR, or as they call CASCAR, Canadian stock car racing. So I lived outside of Toronto in a small town called Bowmanville for a while, did a bunch of racing up there. Then eventually I came back to the States, and the final series that I raced in was actually a pro series known as the Formula Mazda series. Now, that is a formula car powered by a rotary engine, like out of a Mazda RX-7 or a Mazda RX-8. Those cars were the most intense cars I've ever experienced ever. I mean, you rev those engines out to 9,000 RPM, banging through the gears. It's an amazing thing. Now, I know some of you are probably saying, well, if things were going good, the ball was really rolling, what happened? Well, I'll be honest with you. September 11th happened, 2001. After September 11th, when the stock market went down, a lot of companies, pulled back those purse strings, tightened up their belts, and I had a lot of sponsors drop out on me, and they left me holding a big bag of receipts that I still had to pay for. So I made the decision to utilize my degree and get into teaching and do that. But you know what? I am so glad I had the opportunity to race cars professionally. It's something that I never thought I'd be able to do. I got to race on the high banks of Daytona. I got to race at Sebring, Watkins Glen, Laguna Seca. What are some other ones? Road America. I mean, these are road courses that I only saw on television. It's amazing to experience it. I'll be honest. At first, it was very hard. It was very hard going from spectator to participant and back to spectator. But I wouldn't trade it for the world. I wouldn't change a thing. I'm a firm believer that whatever you do in your life gets you to this point. The good, the bad, and the ugly. And the most important thing is to try to do is not have those regrets. which thankfully through time I've been able to process a lot of it, and I don't have any regrets. And I'm glad that I did it, and I'm glad that I'm able to share it with you guys. I hope that you really appreciate this video. This was a little part of me that I was given to you guys with my racing past. If you have any other questions about it, drop them in that comment section. You could email me at raitiesrides.com at my website. Visit my Instagram. I have a bunch of original content on Raities Rides on Instagram, all original. Um, if there's something that you would like me to vlog about or you want to see featured on Raities Rides, leave a comment in that comment section. A lot of these vlogs, like I said, people have been wanting it, and here I am delivering. I promise I'll be bringing more vlogs about my racing career, especially, one thing right off the bat is racing in the rain for the first time or racing at Daytona for the first time. I'll be honest, it was a little scary at first, but we'll get to that at another point. Thank you guys for watching. Hit that subscribe button if you have not subscribed. Thank you guys who have already subscribed. Keep on watching. And like always, I'll see you on the next ride.